Welcome to the Happiness Podcast. I'm Dr. Robert Puff. Have you been feeling or seeing a lot of anger in our world lately? But what happens when we hang on to our anger for too long? If you've ever been or known someone angry for a while, you probably realize that's not good. But why is that? There's a famous quote that goes, "Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." We often think that our anger is a weapon we throw at our enemies, but psychologically and spiritually, anger is a fire we hold in our own hands. We are the first ones to get burned. Though we often think of violence in the forms of verbal or physical, did you know there's actually a psychological violence? It's an internal act of dehumanization, reducing another person to a monster, an object, or an obstacle in the privacy of our own mind. And this causes us to suffer. Even if we're right about the facts, but we're wrong in our internal state, we still lose. Before we delve too deeply into this topic of drinking the poison, I do want to make very clear that I'm not saying we shouldn't feel anger when we see injustice. Anger can be healthy because it's a biological signal that a boundary has been crossed. But here's the distinction. Anger is a spark. It is not the fuel. When we're experiencing injustice or see it in someone else's life, anger is good for waking us up and starting the engines of change. We would call that the spark. The fuel part of our anger is when we try to run our lives on high-octane fuel of hatred. The engine, our mind and body, will eventually burn out. Our goal needs to be about sustainability. This is where we're able to keep our peace so that we have the strength to actually make a difference. Let's start by talking about the psychology and the science of the why. The more we do something, the more we create habits. These can be called neural grooves or neuroplasticity. So every time we practice mental violence, ruminating on how much we hate someone, we're carving a deeper groove into our brain. We're training ourselves to be an angry person. Centuries ago, Aristotle wrote, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit." But the same is true for anger. Neurologically, our amygdala with time gets hijacked. When we dehumanize an enemy, our amygdala, fear center, hijacks our prefrontal cortex, the logic center. It actually makes us less smart. We lose creativity, nuance, and strategic thinking. But if we truly want to change our world or change the situation that we're going through right now that is so difficult, we actually need a clear, calm mind. Our bodies don't know the difference between fighting a war and thinking about a war, even if that war is with another person. It creates a physical toll on our body, creating cortisol and adrenaline that permeates our bodies. Next, let's explore some examples in history, in life, of using our anger inappropriately and appropriately. Over the past 30 years, as a clinical psychologist, I've worked with a lot of couples who are going through a divorce or are divorced and struggling. What I've seen often is a couple go through a very messy divorce. They were wronged. Then for the next 10 years, they're obsessed with their ex, wishing them bad karma and telling everyone how evil they are. But their ex, on the other hand, has moved on and they're happy, while the other spouse is stuck in a time loop, imprisoned in their own hatred. Sadly, psychological violence creates a prison where the victim is also the jailer. There's a sad story of Captain Ahab and Moby Dick. Ahab has a legitimate grievance. The whale took his leg. He feels justified in his rage, but his obsession with destroying the enemy sinks his own ship. When we become obsessed with destroying a monster, we risk becoming one. Next, there's a story of Dr. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐿 Semmelweis. He was the discoverer that hand washing saves lives, and he was 100% right. But when his colleagues disagreed, he attacked them with vitriol, calling them murderers. His hostility made people reject his life-saving ideas. he died alone in an asylum. Sadly, sometimes the most beautiful truths delivered with venom is poison. When we're right but rageful, people often don't listen to us. They just hear the rage. So next, let's explore some examples of people using their anger correctly. In my own practice, what I've seen when couples do get divorced is when they have children and they choose to take the high road no matter what their ex did to them. They never speak ill of their ex to their children. Years later, the children realize the truth on their own, and thus the parent was able to keep their integrity and have a healthy relationship with their children throughout their lives. But if the other parent did not constrain themselves, often their relationship with their children is very estranged later in their lives, no matter what the ex did. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Next, there's Jackie Robinson. He broke the baseball color barrier in 1947. He faced death threats and slurs, but he chose to make a pact not to fight back, not out of weakness, but out of strategy. He channeled his energy into the game. If he had raged back, he would have confirmed their bias. By staying calm, he exposed their ugliness. Self-control is the ultimate form of power. During World War II, Louis Lamborghini was captured by the enemy and was tortured by his captor, called the Bird. He was consumed by hatred after the war, and it nearly destroyed his marriage and his life. Then he realized he needed to forgive the guard if Louis wanted to have a good life. He learned the truth that Lewis Smead wrote about. To forgive is to set a prisoner free and to discover that the prisoner was you. There's a beautiful American parable about two wolves. A grandfather tells his grandson about the battle inside of him between two wolves. One is evil, anger, envy, ego. One is good, joy, peace, love. Which one will win? The one we feed. Psychological violence feeds the angry wolf. So if we want to have a peaceful life, one not filled with hate, how do we practice nonviolence, or as Gandhi called, ahimsa? First, we can practice the drop the coal visualization. I really like this one. When we feel that hot, righteous rage rising, visualize ourselves holding a burning coal. Acknowledge, this is burning me. Then mentally drop it, not because the other person is right, but because our hands are precious. Over the years, I've really practiced kindness towards others. So when I find that I'm not kind, oh my goodness, can I feel it. I don't condone what the other person did to me, but what is far more important to me is that I let go of that coal because it hurts me. So often when people hurt us, it's a misunderstanding. But when we hurt them back, it isn't. We're trying to hurt them. And I work on being kind towards others because I want to like who I am. Personally, my favorite people in the world are kind people. So I like myself a lot better when I'm kind too. Take a moment and think of this type of person who you would describe as peaceful, happy, joyful just because they're alive, regardless of their circumstances. This path only comes through kindness, gentleness. But if you've listened to what we've been talking about today, it isn't about being walked all over. It's about maintaining our dignity in the face of violence, cruelty from others. I don't think any of us could call Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Jesus Christ weak. And they had a huge impact on our world. Most of us will never reach the level that they got to, but in our own world, with the people we interact with, care for, and don't like, we too can make sure we don't hang onto those coals too long and let them go. Here's another actionable way we can deal with our immediate rage. It's called the 24-hour rule. Never send a text, email, or comment when our heart rates are up. We can write an angry draft, perhaps on a piece of paper, to get it out of our system, then throw it away, and then 24 hours later, write the wise draft. We may or may not send it, but at least we've waited till our heart beats much more softly. We can also separate the soul from the behavior. You've probably heard this wise quote before: love the sinner, hate the sin. We can fight a behavior like injustice, cruelty, lies, without dehumanizing the soul behind it. This is the core of ahimsa. Going back to my divorce analogy, when a couple goes through a divorce, they may not like what their spouse did to them, of course, but it doesn't mean they need to hate their spouse. And they'll do things to make sure they protect themselves, but again, it doesn't mean they need to hate the other person, or more importantly, act towards them in a hateful manner. That is the path of an unhappy life. If we truly want to create a peaceful world for ourselves, we can't do it with violent minds. The outer world is just a reflection of our collective inner state. Life requires us to make a choice, to be right or to be free. We often cannot be both if being right requires hating someone. We really can have beautiful lives, but hating others is not the path to getting there. Even when we just hate them in our minds, we don't want to let others take away the joy and beauty of life from us. We can do this instead. A final affirmation. I release the heavy burden of judgment. I refuse to let the darkness of others dim my own light. I choose peace for my own sake. Thank you for joining me on the Happiness Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, please go to www.happinesspodcast.org. That's happinesspodcast.org. Until next time, accept what is, love what is.